What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Sorcerer Healer. So Sorcerer Healers, not much has changed. As I covered in pretty much all the prior build videos that have been released for this patch, not much has changed between Dragonhold and Harrowstorm. Yes, there were a couple of new sets that were released, but for pretty much all roles in the game, none of the new sets that were introduced really replaced any pre-existing sets that were already being used. So this build here with the Sorcerer Healer, if you're running the Dragonhold build that I released last patch, not much has changed. Maybe a few tweaks here and there just to kind of better optimize the build, but generally speaking, anything that worked in Dragonhold will work perfectly fine in Harrowstorm as well. There weren't that many big balance changes in this patch that kind of justified any sort of wide sweeping changes for any role in the game realistically. So just like the rest of our build videos, we will not be going over gear. That is reserved for the healer gear video, which should be popping up in the upper right hand corner right about now. So if you're interested in knowing what sort of gear you should be running, as well as just more generic healer information like race, CPs, things like that, check out that video and then come back here for these skills, as well as a brief discussion to Sorcerer healers, how they should be played, and kind of how they differ from other healers, their strengths and weaknesses, and so on. So let's go ahead and get started here first with our front bar. This is our Restoration Staff bar. Now we are running the Master's Restoration Staff, so we obviously want to use Illustrious Healing, but even if you're not running the Master's Restoration Staff, you're still going to want to run this ability because it does give you a nice heal over time, which allows for a fairly long period of time as well. So it's a 12-second heal over time, otherwise known as a hot, for, in this case, pre-buffed about 1500 health every second. It's actually pretty decent heal over time and definitely covers a wide area. It's an 8-meter radius for 12 seconds, so definitely a nice heal over time that you should have out pretty much always in a trial scenario. Then we have Comet Prayer, which acts as an AoE burst heal, as well as the most consistent source of Minor Berserk in the game. I should say one of the most consistent sources of Minor Berserk. This is going to be mainly used for that Minor Berserk. You're not really going to be using it too often for that heal. The heal is definitely a nice component, and if you do need an AoE burst, then Comet Prayer is going to be one of your best options here. But you should be able to layer down enough hots that you don't necessarily need to use it for the burst heal. You're mainly going to be using it to maintain that Minor Berserk buff. Next we have our burst heal, which is Twilight Matriarch. So this is pretty nice. It's a very strong burst heals. You can see here 11.1k health on a non-crit pre-buff heal. That's a lot stronger than a lot of other burst heals from a lot of other healers. DK healers, for example, their burst heal is probably only around 8k or so pre-buffed. Even a Templar burst heal, Breath of Life, doesn't quite match what a Matriarch is able to do. Plus, Matriarch will get that full burst heal to 2 people, so really powerful burst heal here. The downside is, in order to run Twilight Matriarch, you do need to have it slotted on both bars, so you're giving up some flexibility, some bar flexibility, in order to have this really powerful burst heal. Next we have Daedric Tomb. This is mainly to help proc our enchant here, our passive exploitation under the dark magic line, which provides minor prophecy. So if you are in a magicka heavy group, you will need to run some dark magic ability here. Daedric Tomb just happens to be one of the better options along with dark conversion, but if you're running in a very stamina heavy group, you won't need exploitation as much, so you can probably drop this and replace this with any other sort of ability that you feel you might need as a healer. Then we have Energy Orb for the heal, as well as the Combustion Synergy to help return resources back to the group. So really strong heal. It's actually one of the strongest healing abilities in the game if you just take a look at raw healing done per second. And of course the Combustion Synergy is always important to have in order to help sustain rotations for your DPS. Then for ultimate, we have Absorption Field, which is actually a really nice heal. So you can see here 1300 health every half a second on top of the stun and the basically immunity from AoE effects. So it's a really nice ultimate heal to use for progression groups when you just need raw healing done in an ultimate and don't necessarily need to worry about major force uptime from aggressive Warhorn. But of course you will be using aggressive Warhorn most of the time, but this is a nice fallback if you do need the additional burst heal. Then for our back bar, this is a Lightning Staff bar. We have Liquid Lightning for the Conduit Synergy. Power Surge as another essentially AoE heal. You can kind of treat it as a heal over time. It heals every 3 seconds every time you activate, you get a critical heal. So it is reliant on getting a crit heal, but you do have several heal over times down, and you should be running the Thief Mundus, so you should be able to get a pretty good uptime on critical surge heal that goes out. It's actually pretty decent. It's an 18-meter radius, so if you think about it, almost a little over twice as large, which is twice as big of a radius as Healing Springs or Illustrious Healing. So it does cover quite a wide area, and in terms of healing done per second, it doesn't quite match up to Illustrious Healing, but it covers a wider area, and it's sort of you can just activate it every 33 seconds and just kind of forget about it, so it's actually a pretty nice ability to have as a sword healer. Matriarch again, because we do need to have it double slotted as a pet. Blockade of Storms to help proc our enchants, as well as off balance, and then Elemental Drain for Major Breach and Minor Magicka Steal. If you're in a stamina heavy group or your other healer is running Ellie Drain, then you might not need to run Ellie Drain, so you can just drop this for another ability if you're kind of fit into those two scenarios. Then Aggressive Warhorn for the Major Force. Now about other abilities you might want to consider having. So in place of Daedric Tomb to help proc exploitation, you could run Dark Conversion instead. This basically converts your stamina into magicka, which could be beneficial if you're running something like Martial Knowledge, where you kind of have to micromanage your stamina. It costs 2,000 stamina, a little over 2,000 to activate, so you could use it to help maintain your sub 50% stamina. But you do need to pay attention to when you cast this ability, because there is a cast time associated with it. So you won't be able to do anything during that 1 second, including blocking. So just pay very close attention to when you use Dark Conversion if you are going to be running this ability. Generally speaking, you probably won't need additional magicka sustain. You should be able to get plenty of sustain just by heavy attacking and timing your heavy attacks correctly. But if you feel like you do need additional sustain, or if you want a new way to kind of manage your stamina, then you can run Dark Conversion. Under Daedric Summoning, if you want to help out your magic DPS sustain, you can run Empowered Ward. This also acts as a shield as well for you, but it provides Minor Intellect, which helps boost magicka regen, so beneficial. If you want just raw magicka, you could just run Bound Aegis. It's not going to be particularly useful because your primary job is not necessarily to deal damage. It's kind of like a secondary role here, but it is nice to have that option there to help have more magicka. Under Stormcalling, not much here to really talk about. You could run, not Hurricane, you should run Bound the Storm if you wanted to deal a little bit more damage and get Major Resolve. But again, damage is not necessarily your primary role as a healer, it's kind of more of a secondary role. But it is a potential option to run if you just have bar space that's just sort of sitting out there in the open. Under the weapons line, under the Destro Staff line, consider picking up Crushing Shock for that ranged interrupt. Then under the rest of staff line, you can run Radiating Regeneration as a nice heal over time, especially for 4-man content, since it hits 3 allies now. Steadfast Ward, you will need to run this if you're running the Blackrose Prison Restoration Staff, but even if you're not, Healing Ward is actually not that bad of a heal over time. So you can see here the shield strength is actually not terrible. It's just shy of 5.6k damage shield, and it does increase depending on how much damage whoever is receiving the shield has taken. And then while the shield is up, the target is also healed for a percentage of the shield's remaining strength. So it's actually not that bad of a heal over time. So definitely consider using it if you want to add additional HOTS on your front bar. Then we have Force Siphon. Both Morse Quick Siphon and Siphon Spirit provide minor lifesteal. Quick Siphon provides minor expedition, and Siphon Spirit provides minor magicka steal. The Quick Siphon might be beneficial to the increase in movement speed. Siphon Spirit just provides you an additional way to apply minor magicka steal on top of minor lifesteal as well. There are other ways to get minor lifesteal, which might be stronger or more useful, so you might not necessarily be running either of these morphs, but it is an option to run on your rest of staff bar. Because Sorcs have a class shield, you might not need to run Annulment, but if you want to, you can. The damage shield you get is going to be the same size as your Empowered Ward. It's 50% for Empowered, 60% for Hardened, which is the exact same as Annulment. So you're not getting any additional shields by running either Morph of Annulment, you're just getting different effects. If you are running Zen, make sure to have Consuming Trap for your dot to help maintain Zen uptime. Same thing under the Mage's Guild, Entropy or Scalding Rune to help maintain your additional damage from Zens. So it's important to have those there if you are the Zen's healer. Fighter skills, consider picking up Bringer Preservation for a small heal as well as minor protection, but you're usually going to be better off running this on like a tank or a stamina DPS, so don't really pick it up if you don't need it. Under the Undaunted line, make sure to have all these abilities unlocked. Overflowing Alt provides minor lifesteal and the Blood Feast synergy, which is a pretty strong heal, emergency heal synergy. Shadow Silk is going to be used for the Black Widow synergy, which is still just free damage. It's been nerfed a few times, but it's still free damage. Inner Rage, there are going to be some strategies where you will need to taunt enemies and drag them into groups, so make sure to have a taunt here for those strategies. They're fairly rare, but you still consider picking this ability up. Bone Surge for the Spinal Surge synergy, which gives out Major Vitality, which is useful in high healing scenarios like Baneful Mark and Execute in Cloud Rest, for example. It's pretty nice to have that ability to provide Major Vitality to the group that way. Finally, under the Alliance War line, Reviving Barrier is a decent ability to run for progression groups. It gives you a very large damage shield as well as a nice heal over time. So definitely, again, a nice option for progression groups if you need more survivability compared to just raw damage from Major Force from Warhorn. Then for Purges, run Efficient Purge just to help cleanse any debuffs from the group. And that pretty much covers it for all those skills that you're going to want to have on hand as a Sorc healer. Now, in terms of healing in general, healing in ESO kind of fits more into a support rather than just raw healing. While healing is going to be one of your primary roles, a second portion of your primary role as a healer is going to be buff your allies and debuff your enemies. These can come from different sources, like abilities or sets that you're wearing. For example, I'm wearing Hollowfang for this particular setup. So with Hollowfang, that's a buff to magicka DPS sustain through the 5-piece effect. So I'm able to buff allies by running specific sets, as well as just using certain abilities, like for example Comet Prayer for the Minor Berserk buff. It's a very strong damage buff, which helps improve overall DPS. And then of course you also have debuffs you want to maintain as well. So things like Zens and Martial Knowledge, for example, you're going to want to pay attention to maintaining good uptime on those debuffs. And then for abilities, you don't really have that many here as a Sorc. You're mainly focused more on buffs as a Sorc. You don't really have that many debuff abilities here. But a good example of a debuff would be something like Blockade of Storms to help provide the off-balance debuff and help proc your enchant as well. If you're in like the Crusher enchant or the shock damage enchant, those help provide additional resistance mitigation, resistance reduction, as well as helping with concussed uptime for the shock enchant. So you're going to want to make sure to maintain good uptime on Blockade in order to get good off-balance uptime and enchant uptime on your back bar as well. So Sorc healers. One of the bigger weaknesses of Sorc healers is the fact that you do need to give up some bar space in order to run Twilight Matriarch. Now, you don't have to run the Matriarch. There are going to be Sorc healers out there that don't run the Matriarch and are perfectly capable of healing through pretty much all content in the game. By giving up the Matriarch, you do gain back those 2 ability slots, but you will end up losing out on a burst heal. Now, you do have several options when it comes to healing over times, so things like Illustrious Healing, Energy Orb, Healing Ward if you're running that, and Critical Surge or Power Surge. Those can all pretty much cover most damage in the game. That burst heal here is only really for emergencies when you see your tank's health go down by 20k, 25k because they miss a heavy attack or something like that. It's just more of an emergency backup plan in case your heal over times are going to take too much time to heal somebody up all the way up to full health. So you can in fact drop Twilight Matriarch to get back those 2 ability slots. But for most healers and most groups, I would not necessarily recommend doing so and just eat the 2 ability slots to have Twilight Matriarch slotted. Beyond that, Sorc healers do have a unique synergy they're able to provide through Liquid Lightning. That being said, a Sorc DPS might also be able to provide it, but because running Liquid Lightning or Lightning Flood is actually DPS loss for a lot of magicka Sorc builds, generally speaking, a Sorc healer is going to be in the best position to run Liquid Lightning for that conduit synergy. But outside of that, there's not much else that a Sorc healer can provide that other healer classes can provide in their own. Minor Prophecy from Exploitation is a unique buff to Sorcs, but better provided via Sorc DPS because they're using Crystal Frags, which procs Exploitation, versus on a Sorc healer, you're going to want to run something like Daedric Tomb or Dark Conversion, both of which, while they are useful in their own rights, don't really provide any direct benefit to healing necessarily. So Sorc healers, while they can heal most content in the game, they're definitely not going to be as popular as Templar or Warden healers. But that pretty much covers it for this build video. Healing in general, it's kind of harder to explain things. It's much easier to see healing kind of being done. So I have provided down in the description below the links to a couple of content creators that do heal as their main character. I don't really heal very often, much less Sorc heal. So I do recommend checking those guys out in the description if you guys want to take a look at Twitch VODs or YouTube videos of Sorc healers in action. As always, though, you can always ask questions on this channel and this video by leaving a comment down below. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability, but I do recommend checking out those content creators instead for more accurate information than what I'm usually able to provide. But again, I hope you guys found this video informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.